Hello, Sublation Media viewers. I want to tell you about Alex Taik Gwang-Lee's book from Sublation, entitled Made in Nowhere. It presents a serious challenge to the Western left, and especially to communists or Marxists who've embraced a vulgar anti-imperialism, a reactionary, nationalist, and ultimately racist anti-imperialism, in an effort to become more militantly radical after the collapse of the social democratic left in 2020. The full title of his book is this: Made in Nowhere, Essays on the Asiatic Modes of Existence. And we should pause for a moment and note that the phrase Asiatic Mode of Existence is a riff on Marx's Asiatic Mode of Production. In the 19th century, Marx looked at Asia as a pre-capitalist land where the mode of production had developed through communal ownership under a despotic state, a region where, despite large infrastructure projects, social development had stalled out and stagnated. The caste system was so strong in Asia, Marx believed, that the usual engine for progress, the class struggle, was weak. The path from slavery to feudalism to capitalism was not open to the people of Asia, not without an intervention from the West. In the 21st century, however, the question of an Asiatic mode of production is no longer relevant. That intervention from the West arrived in Asia both through the Chinese Revolution and through the Cold War. The question for us today is not whether Asia is stagnating due to a diverging mode of production, but rather just what opportunities for social progress, for socialism, exist in Asia, and most specifically in China. And if there are great opportunities there, just where, in what class and institutions do they reside? In order to discover the answers to these questions, Alex steps back into the 19th and early 20th centuries. He guides the reader through a process of learning or relearning what capital is, or from the vantage point of post-2008 leftism, what capitalism was. He begins his book this way. Since the financial crisis of 2008, we have witnessed astounding proclamations indicating that capitalism is dead, or at least dying. A similar scene repeated amid the COVID-19 pandemic. Some experts quickly anticipated the end of global capitalism and the onset of a new Cold War. However, capitalism did not die. Why is this happening? How does capitalism sustain itself? Many arguments attempt to explain capitalism's survival, but I think we should return to Marx. To discover just what capitalism is and why it survives, even in Asia, Alex Taik Gwang-Lee suggests we consider how Marx began his book Capital, his critique of political economy. That is, like Marx, we should begin with the commodity and, through that, through the commodity fetish. The value of commodities, what counts as an authentic commodity, who or which nation will be allowed to produce and sell which commodities in the global market, is a hotly debated topic today. These are questions wrapped in rhetoric, trade deals, trade wars, high-tech fantasies, corporate aesthetics, and even, sometimes, in wrapping paper. Does a knockoff Gucci bag with a slightly warped logo count as a commodity? Does a fake iPhone with substandard processors and a plastic rather than an aluminum shell count as a commodity? It turns out that the answer to these questions is yes. Knockoffs are commodities, even though they are less valuable commodities, and even though they fetch a cheaper price than the supposedly luxury brand versions that they imitate. What makes them commodities is not their resemblance to other more authentic brand name goods, but rather this. A fake iPhone or Gucci bag may be substandard and cheap, but both are still useful items that embody the labor time of the workers who made them. And that's what a commodity is, ultimately, the sensuous embodiment of the social relationship of productive labor. And the price of these commodities, while set by forces such as supply and demand, and even by haggling or perhaps marginal utility, is ultimately founded upon the labor time necessary to produce the product. For Alex, as well as for Marx, understanding the commodity as the foundational concept and material force that sets up capitalist social relations clarifies both social reality and our political task. Those who wonder if contemporary China might be socialist, those who look to the East as already opposed to the decadent imperialist and capitalist West, who believe there is an alternative to capitalism already available, or who fantasize that we are already post-capitalist should, according to Alex, face how all of society, East and West, is still mediated by commodities and the production of commodities. Why is this so difficult to grasp? What is it that compels both young Chinese and young Americans to posit confused definitions of capitalism so that the necessity of overcoming our current conditions is occluded? Why are we so stuck in what the late Mark Fisher called capitalist realism? The cause is not CCP propaganda, the charisma of Xi, subliminal messages from TikTok, or a brainwashed laser beam from Mars, but rather it comes down to what the Marxist theorist George Lukács called reification. In order to describe reification, the process whereby social relationships and the products of human activity are taken to be natural facts arising from nature, Lukács quotes Marx on the fetish character of the commodity. Quote, "The commodity is therefore a mysterious thing, simply because in it the social character of men's labor appears to them as an objective character stamped upon the product of that labor, because the relation of the producers to the sum total of their own labor is presented to them as a social relation existing not between themselves, but between the products of their labor. This is the reason the products of labor become commodities, social things whose qualities are at the same time perceptible and imperceptible by the senses. It is only a definite social relation between men that assumes, in their eyes, a fantastic form of a relation between things." So to clarify what this means, let's return to the example of the iPhone. When we consider it, we don't take up the natural materials or even the labor that went into producing it, but rather we consider it first in terms of its price. An Apple iPhone Pro Max is worth $1.2 thousand, whereas the Pixel 9a is worth $500. This means you can get one iPhone for roughly 2.5 pixels. What is left out of this account is information about where the Pixel is made, what the conditions of the labor are in the Pixel factories, how long it takes to produce a Pixel, what the average wage of the workers in those factories are, what the cost of the workers' commodities are, the rent that they pay for a place to sleep, the price of food, the price of clothing, the price of transportation, the price of their education, entertainment, if they have time and money for any, and so on. What is left out, in short, are the lives of the class of people who make the commodities. Instead of considering pixels versus iPhones as a question of working conditions, labor time, marketing campaigns, and international legal protections, or lack of protections, we instead just consider the phones themselves and maybe the logos. On a national level, we don't consider the struggles of workers in the United States along the struggles of Chinese workers. We don't consider the power of these workers as workers, but instead look to the numbers. Chinese GDP versus US GDP, US exports as compared to Chinese exports, and so on. In this way, the power and responsibility of Chinese and US workers for the wealth and poverty of the world is ignored. Instead of thinking of them, of us, we think about the iPhones, the Gucci bags, the bowls of rice, the electric cars, the real estate, and the high-tech weaponry, and how it's all divvied up. And from there, we think of the world in terms of national property rights over the naturally arising commodities. All of this is a process of reification. All of this is a way to ignore the persisting reality of capitalism in the United States, China, North Korea, South Korea, Vietnam, Cambodia, and even in Canada, Europe, Australia, and Africa. If you enjoyed this conversation, please do consider supporting us on Patreon. Our patrons help to make sure that Sublation Media can continue to provide interviews, videos, books, and articles that are critical of the left from the left. If you are tired of remaining stuck within bourgeois ideologies and politics, help us sublate them both.